Hey guys, Carl from Moose Plays. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Turing Tumble from designer Paul Boswell and publisher Upper Story. This one's going to be a little bit different than most of the things that are on my channel because by the strictest definition this is not a board game, and so you might be surprised to see this on the channel, but again the name of this channel is Purple Moose Plays and this is absolutely something I can play with. Also, as a science teacher, this is something that I was very interested to check out. Let me explain a little bit more about what this is before I dive down to the table. But this is going to be sort of a puzzly building game puzzle that you're going to try and design a computer, basically, a physical representation of a computer using marbles to sort of run through some kind of program with both the sort of dual goal of learning a bit about how programming and how computer systems run, and then also to sort of work through an interesting logic-based puzzle. So as a science teacher, as somebody who is interested in learning more about computers and programming, this is something I was absolutely very excited to be able to test out and try out and be able to bring to all of you, because just because this is not strictly a board game, watching my channel means you probably have some similar tastes to mine, and you might also be interested in this as well. So let's head down to the table to see what this is, how it works, and give you some idea of how one of the puzzles in this game works, and then I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think. All right, so here you see sort of the main setup or the main board for Turing Tumble, with a sort of reservoir of blue balls up here on the left side, a reservoir of red balls up here on the right side. And then there's this sort of pegboard that I'm going to be slotting in different pieces to sort of build the components of this sort of mechanical computer that I am building. And down here are these levers that will be releasing the balls into the system. This one being the blue lever that will launch blue balls, and the red lever that will release the red balls. So what I'm going to be doing for this video is that first I'm going to show you all of the different components that come in the box and sort of show you how they work. And then after I've done that, I will jump ahead to one of the later puzzles in the game and sort of try and solve it live on video so you can get some idea about how the puzzles work, what kind of thinking is involved in solving those puzzles, and so you can basically just see one of these advanced sort of modules run on the system as well. So the first main component that is in the game are these green ramps, and you will be using these green ramps in every different system that you create. And thinking of this like a mechanical computer, these green ramps are basically going to be the wires that the electricity is running through in your computer. Only in this case, the electricity is represented by these physical balls. Because there is a large sort of rule to this game in that you can't ever have a ball that's simply falling through an empty space inside the board. So everywhere that these balls are going, they have to be carried by these ramps as if electricity was flowing through wires. So for example, if I set something up like this, these ramps are effectively working like a wire that connects that blue reservoir at the top down to the switch at the bottom, or the lever at the bottom. So this is going to continuously cycle the blue balls through the system until all of them have reached the bottom down here. So I'm going to start by launching the ball, and I just realized that I don't have this switch. So another piece that this game comes with is this little switch, and you get to choose, or you're told by certain challenges where to put the switch. In this case, I'm going to stick it in the blue side, and I'll leave it there for now unless the challenge that I do tells me otherwise. So I'm going to push that to start. And you'll see this is, again, very simple. Just the ball is moving down the ramp, carried all the way to the bottom, and every time it gets to the bottom, it's triggering that lever, again releasing the next ball in the sequence. And this will continue until all of the blue balls have been dropped down to the bottom. And just so you don't have to sit here and watch all of this, I will now jump ahead to the finish and talk about the next component. Now this time I have reset to only 3 blue balls, so nothing is going to run for all that long, just so you can get an idea of how things work. And the next component is this sort of crossover piece. It's going to work just like a ramp, but it's going to allow us for sort of our mechanical wires to cross over each other and allow for some sort of crisscross patterns across the board. So I could use this to set something up that the balls will sort of alternate back and forth. Let me go ahead and do that quickly, and I'll be right back to show you how that works. So here you see, using the crossover, I've effectively connected the blue side to the blue balls to the red lever, and therefore again the red balls through the crossover to the blue lever. And what this should do when I start this machine is the blue balls will trigger red balls, the red balls will trigger blue balls, and they'll continue alternating back and forth until something runs out, which in this case will be the blue balls. So starting that up, you'll see the blue ball goes down and triggers the red ball, which does the same thing in the opposite direction, triggering another blue ball. And it will continue going back and forth again like that until we run out of balls. And you'll see here now there's no more blue balls to trigger, so it simply ends the system. The next component is this very simple one called the interceptor. And this one is simply going to stop or catch a ball at some point in the system that's basically just going to stop everything from running. So I'll just simply swap one in here to show you how that works. But we can just put one in like that. And doing that, if I place a blue ball back at the top and start the machine, the blue ball is going to run through the system, triggering a red ball. Only now the red ball is going to come out and simply be caught by the interceptor, which is going to stop all movement. The next component in the box is the bit, which is this little arrow or kind of switch that's going to be able to turn back and forth, left and right. And this is going to function just like a binary bit in your computer. Turning this way is off and turning this way is on, or turning this way is 0, turning this way is 1. So you can use this to simply switch back and forth between things in your computer, but also you can use this much like a computer would to represent numbers or even letters. But in this case, I'm not sure we have enough space on this board to represent more difficult or advanced things like letters, and I don't know binary that well myself to figure out how to do that. But we can simply make a nice little addition machine that I will build for you right now and show you how that works. All right, so here we are all set up with a very simple machine that will count the number of blue balls that go through up to a total of 7. And the reason it works up to 7 is because, again, these are binary numbers. And if you know anything about binary numbers, this is now a 3-digit binary number. The first one represents 0 or 1. The second one represents 0 or 2. And the third one represents 0 or 4. So if all three of them were turned on, that's 1 plus 2 plus 4 is 7. So that is the highest number that can be counted using this system. But you'll see here at the top, I've got this loaded with 5 balls. So I'm going to run it through and let you see that it will count the number 5. And now that it's gone through, you can see that this top one and this bottom one are both turned on. That is a 1 plus 4 gives me a 5. So that's how the switches can be used as a sort of register using binary to represent a number. And if you switched all of these around the other direction, you could actually make it subtract instead of adding as well. And then finally, the last component that does come in this set are what are called gear bits. And you can see these gear bits are just like the bits in that they can turn left and right. There's an arrow on them. However, they can all be connected together with a gear, such that when this top one turns right, both of the other ones turn right, and when this top one turns left, both of the other ones turn left. And I'm not going to show you a demonstration of this one because this will be sort of required use in the actual puzzle that I'm going to solve for you right now. Now I understand if you don't want any of the puzzles in the book spoiled, but there are 60 puzzles, and I do want to give you sort of an idea of what kinds of puzzles you might see in the game. So I'm going to set one up and sort of walk through the puzzle solution. And to do that, here I am all set up for challenge 33. So looking at the page in the book, actually before I do that I should mention, the book that comes with this game is really nice. I'm going to show it to you here on the screen and then we'll zoom in on a specific page for the challenge. But this puzzle book is really cool in that not only are there puzzles inside, but it starts with this sort of comic book of this woman in space and her Spaceship, basically, it gets shot down. It malfunctions because of some strange light that shot it. She lands on a planet, and she finds this strange building. And then inside that strange building, there is a computer that seems to be broken, and it's based on AI. And it's sort of this computer that you're slowly repairing by building all of the different puzzles. And you can see that every time it sort of walks you through how things work out. And then as you get into later on new pieces of information, it introduces very nicely the different components and how those get used. And then it'll introduce some challenges based on those specific components. But again, for this video, I will be doing challenge 33, which is already what you see set up on the screen. So let me load up that page on the screen, and you can see here. Challenge 33, teleportation. It is a 3.5-star challenge. And you can even see here some of how the sort of comic book flavor text spills over into the puzzles. But for this puzzle, my challenge is to make a gear bit B that points the same direction as gear bit A without changing the final direction A points. Which means this gear bit here is A and this gear bit here is B. And if A is pointing to the left, then at the end of the puzzle, B should also be pointing to the left, regardless of whether or not it started left or right. So in this situation where this started to the left and this started to the right, at the end, they should both be facing left. Likewise, if A was facing right, A should not change, but by the end of the puzzle, B should be facing right as well. And to complete this challenge, I am going to have available to me 2 of the crossover bits, or 2 of the crossover pieces, 1 standard bit, 1 interceptor, obviously the switch, but by telling me I have the switch available to me, it means I get to choose whether I want blue or red to start off my system. And then it says I have an infinite number of ramps. So it doesn't matter how many ramps I use to connect everything together, but otherwise I can only use this 1 regular bit, this 1 interceptor here, and these 2 crossovers to connect up this system that, again, will make sure that this side bit matches this side bit direction by the end of this puzzle. So realistically, what it seems to me is that wherever this one turns, I need to make sure it turns back again. So if it turns to the right, I need to make sure that it turns back again to the left. And likewise, if it turns to the left, I need to make sure that it turns, if it turns to the right, I need to make sure that it turns again back to the left. And that's pretty easy, I think. Because if I put 1 ramp there, facing in, Actually, I don't even need to do that, because if I put 1 there, it's going to instantly turn back the other way as that ball falls through the center. So I can make that if I start with blue and I work my way to here, it's automatically going to reset itself. The thing is, I need to make it go through the red set once and then do it again, only this time triggering a switch that makes it stop. So let's see what I can do. Let me set up the blue side first. Wait, but in setting up, I just realized something. Because I need to make sure that if it was as simple as these always start opposite each other, this turns once and that's the end, then that would be great. Except that if they start facing the same direction and I make it so that this turns once only, then it's going to turn once and be in the wrong direction. So I need to figure out a way to test if it's left or right, which means I think that I need to put a crossover right here, if it will let me. And it looks like maybe that's not okay. But yeah, it's gotta be. So let me see if I take this off and put this on like that, and then put this on over top. Does that still work? It does. Okay, now the reason I need to put that cross over there is because If it comes out this side, it's going to go over here. And if it comes out this side, it's going to go over here. So let's set that up first. And I'll fill in everything and then I'll explain the next step. All right, so basically what this setup now is going to do is that the blue ball is going to come down here. If this one turns right and then left, that means it was focused to the left automatically. That's going to go red. And if this one is focused to the right or turned to the right to start, it's going to fall down this side through the middle and it will go back to blue. So now we got to figure out what that means to me. Coming over here, if red hits this side, it turns left. And if it hits this side and then this side, it also turns left. So basically, if it goes on the outside or the inside of any given side or gear, it's going to turn the same way. So if I push here, it turns right and stays right. Likewise, if I push here and then here, it also stays right. So I need to figure out a way to switch left or right. So I think maybe I have to start with red. And that's where the switch has to happen. But how do I stop things? If this starts and turns to the left. Oh, I see. I see. If this turns to the right, then the ball's going to go left, and that way is going to stay right, and that gets blue. So if this is turned to the right, blue needs to trigger this to turn to the right. And I can simply do that by coming here with blue. And that'll turn through there and turn through there, and then just stop. But meanwhile, if this is turned to the left, blue comes through here and triggers red. So now I need to make sure that red can turn this left regardless of where it's coming. So red has to come down here through the middle, and we'll turn that to the right. All right, if this is right, then through there and through there and through there is red. Red comes through the middle here. If it's already to the right, it will stay to the right. And if it's not, if it's to the left, this will also stay to the right. Okay, then this needs to be my switch. Because if blue happens again, it needs to go this way instead of this way. Got it? My stop has to be whatever happens after red goes right there, which means I definitely need a ramp from the inside track of that to here. Likewise, if this turns that way and the ball falls here, or this turns that way and the ball falls here, I need that ramp to connect also. Like that. And then I need a ramp from blue that connects that switch into my red gear. Like that. And I need to go from red to connect into this gear, such that it runs in the middle if possible. I guess it doesn't matter either way. So if it comes this way, it'll go that way. And if it comes this way, it'll go that way. Likewise, if it comes this way, it'll go that way. Or this way, it'll go that way. So let's just keep it separate visually so that it looks nice. And that like that. And hopefully this does work. I'm going to run it 4 times to prove to you that it does work, but I think that this is the solution. I didn't use the second bit, or the second, crossover piece, but I shouldn't need it. Let's see how this works. And if it's broken, then I'll fix it. But if we start left, left, they should both stay this, because this should never change and this should match that. So if this is workable, it should stay exactly left, left. Let's see what happens. I realized I made a mistake already. This needs to start switched that way. Let's try that again. If they both start left, go. That stays left. And now that also stays left. Great. Okay. If this is left and this is right, it should end up left, left. So that stays left. And that changes left. Perfect. It works. Let me clear out this reservoir for a minute, just so we have some space. Put some blue balls back up there. Now, if this starts right and left, that stays right, and that turns right. Perfect. And if this starts right and right, like that, again, this always has to start facing that way. This stays right, and that one also stays right. Perfect. That is the solution to challenge 33, teleportation. So while I'm here, usually in a normal video that I do like to take a look at the components. You've seen all of the components on the screen. The book, I'm sorry I held it up in the camera. It was a little bit kind of glary, but I think you got an idea of what that book looks like. I do want to talk about the book. The way that the puzzles are set up and the sort of instructions for the puzzles are incredibly clear and really, really easy to understand. What pieces you need, what your challenge is, what the setup is, and so on. The comic book, while the story doesn't necessarily tie directly into what you're doing, I enjoy the story. I really like the artwork in the comic book. The story is fun to follow through, and really what it does is it sort of makes me push because I really want to solve more puzzles to get to the next story. So even if the puzzles that you're solving don't necessarily tie directly into the sort of story and how the puzzles work, basically you're fixing the computer to do different things. But again, it does push the narrative along, and it does push me to work my way through more puzzles rather than just the satisfaction of the puzzle. I also get the satisfaction of the ability to read the next chunk of story, which is a lot of fun to me. Otherwise, there are no other real components in the game, but let me show you a look at the insert for this game. So this here is the insert for the box. It's very, very well designed that everything slots really nicely in, so that the crossover pieces stand up in here like that. The gears fit in very nicely, and everything is even sort of got the arrow cut out so they fit perfectly in a specific way. Again, this sort of curved piece of the interceptor fits right into a hole and holds it in very snugly. Those all fit just like that, and these green pieces stand up and slot in really nicely like that. The balls here get separated. You'll see there's some extra little bits in here. Those are just extra pieces from when I originally built the main board. But otherwise, the trigger can just go in one of these big empty spots. There is a lot of empty space, means there could be sort of expansion or new content released for this to fit in some of those pieces. I also know there is a sort of device that you can use to help pick up the balls and load them into the machine. So maybe there's space for that in there as well. In this little bag are these little sort of rubber washers. And this is for use when you use the gear bits. If you only use 2 gear bits, because they move so freely, it sort of messes up. So if you're only using 2 of them, you have to put a washer on them so that they don't move too quickly. The book that I showed you before folds up very nicely. I didn't mention before, but I should. The solutions to all of the challenges are also in the back of the book, which is nice to have that you can check or see if there's a better way or a different way to solve the puzzle than you did yourself, because very often there is more than one way to solve it. But that book slides really nicely in there. On top of that, there is this plastic tray that holds everything tight inside. You didn't see this while I was playing, but the stand that holds the board is actually 2 pieces that slot together, and those fit very, very nicely right into these holes like that. The board itself, which I do want to show you, these switches connect to here based on this system on the back that you did have to build the first time you play it. It's just 2 little pins that go through those other circles and this bar that connects them together. so that when you move this, those also move. But anyway, that fits right there nicely on top of that tray. And everything is held very nicely inside the box, like that. Meet me back up top, and I'll let you know what I think about this sort of puzzle or game system itself. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. This is something I was very interested in checking out as a science teacher, as somebody who loves computers, who's interested in programming but never really got that deep into it, and just as somebody who's sort of in the tech world in general. And I have to say, I am very, very, very glad that I gave this a try, because what is happening here is incredibly clever. Being able to take sort of electronic schematics of a computer and how bits and storage works in a computer, and to turn that into a physical product using marbles and sort of interactive bits on a board is really, really cool and really, really clever, and I am very happy with what they've done here. These, first off, looking at this simply as a puzzle, the puzzles here are really interesting. Now, granted, the first couple sets are going to be fairly tutorial-ish, because it does sort of slowly walk you through the different components and how each one of them works. But sort of the later puzzles of each component does start building on the things that you've learned up till that point. And then sort of that happens in cycles. So you have the first few puzzles of that component are basically teaching you all the things that component can do. And then they'll give you a puzzle or two to sort of make you use what you've learned so far to do something a little bit more complicated. And then you'll shift on to the next component. But by the time all of the components are introduced and you're in sort of the early to mid 30s, this is when things start to get really complicated. The playthrough that you watched, if you watched it, if not, I completely understand, because you don't want to spoil a puzzle potentially, but the puzzle that you did watch, or that I did record, is sort of right on that precipice of when things start getting really complicated, because it really did make me think about how to use things and how to do things. And this one is mostly focused on how to use those gear bits, but it did give me a puzzle that I had to think creatively to sort of integrate all of the components that I have available to me in order to make it accomplish something for real. And this is the piece that gets me, is that all of these puzzles do have some kind of computer-based analog, that this is something that a circuit in a computer might actually need to do for some reason. And this one that I showed you in the playthrough was, if this is left, then this one must end up left. If this is right, then this one must end up right. And this idea of sort of pattern recognition and then pattern matching is an interesting idea. Sort of, how does a computer need to be able to read one thing and make sure that something else is the exact copy of that thing, regardless of the initial sort of starting state of that first thing and of that second thing? So it's a really interesting kind of puzzle, and there are a lot of sort of puzzles that are presented like this in this game, and all of them do require some level of logical thinking, obviously increasing as you get through. But it's this kind of logical thinking that I'm a big fan of as a science and tech kind of person. These are kinds of things, especially like the concept of binary and switches turning on and off. These are definitely things that I've seen in computer sort of courses or in physics class when we're talking a little bit about electronics and switches and transistors and things like that, all of which I only know a little bit about. But something like this is absolutely something that could be used to pull somebody in, especially of a younger age, who doesn't know anything about this computer world, and to sort of train them in the ability to think in the way that they would need to do to understand more complicated physics or programming or computer-based ideas and concepts. So I really love what's happening here, because you could know absolutely nothing about computers, focus strictly on the physicality of this game, and solve these puzzles based on the physical pieces that you're using. And then if you do that and take it another step and look into it a little bit further, you can start to connect these to more real-world concepts of computing and programming that might have been much more difficult to understand if you hadn't done this first. And I think that's really, really cool. Now, one small negative I will say is that in this book itself, there is very little description of that computer science or of that programming information that I wish would have been more. I know there is a link to their website, and I know on their website they have an educator package that does provide some more of that sort of background and connection to those computing terms and concepts. But I really wish, at least to some small level, they would have put some in this book. Now, I understand the book is a little bit thick, and maybe that would have made it too big for the box that's already kind of big already. But again, one core thing about this that I do enjoy so much is that connection between those computer science terms and concepts and the physical sort of machines that you're building in this game. And I wish that I could learn more simply by opening the book or simply by opening this box, and that I could learn more about these actual concepts that these are representing. Unfortunately, that's not here, but again, with a little bit of digging on their website, you do get that opportunity. Otherwise, I'm having a blast. I haven't cleared the end of the 30s. I played through once in preparation for this video, got distracted, and then sort of put it to the side for a long time. And now coming back for this review, I've again played through all of the puzzles up to what you just saw right now is 33. There are 60 puzzles in the game. I think I've only made it to about 39-ish in my first playthrough, and they started to get really, really, really challenging. And the point is, if you're not taking notes or you haven't played recently, remembering all of the different sort of complicated machines you can build with each of the components so that you can learn or remember how to integrate, or not remember, but come up with a plan or a strategy to implement those machines sort of in tandem in some way to solve a bigger problem. If you don't remember those things, it's going to be really hard to solve those later problems. So definitely notes might be a good idea, and or playing quickly in succession so that you can continue building on the concepts that you've used before. But I just wanted to put that out there because these puzzles do get challenging. This is not a cakewalk. Now, if you know the world of computer science and you know the world of programming, maybe some of these things are going to be easy for you because you already understand how they work. But I do want you to understand that in the later half of this book, things definitely get more challenging. So if you're looking for a good challenging puzzle, that challenge is definitely there after you've made it through sort of the introductory chunk of the book. So if there's anything negative I should say about this game is, number one, those marbles are really small, and taking them out of the bottom of the thing and loading them back up in the top can get a little bit annoying is not the right word, but fiddly. It does take some effort. I do know, unfortunately, I don't have access to it right now, but I do know that they make a sort of loader that will sort of pick those out and push them back into the top for you. It's almost like a little screwdriver that holds the marbles inside and sort of sucks them in and pushes them out. With that, things might get quite a bit easier. I do also know on their own website, there are links, or a couple links, to several other people who have made sort of digital versions of the machine online. So sometimes for some of the more complicated pieces, I will go onto the internet using one of those systems, build it up and play with it until I sort of figure out what it is that I need to do. And then I'll set up the physical setup and put everything up. And you might ask me why, if you've already done the puzzle in the sort of digital world, do you set it up on the physical world? Well, that's another big strength of this game, is that it's just fun to see all of the sort of machines run through what they're going to do. And seeing that on a computer screen is not quite the same thing. You don't get the tactile feel of building it. You don't get that sort of audio sensation of all of the things clicking and clacking as the marbles are rolling through. And realistically, it's just a lot of fun to play with this sort of physical machine that's doing something that electronics do in your computer. So even if I play online, it's definitely fun to set them up physically and see them run through and watch how they go. If there's anything else negative, the one thing that I would really love to see more here is some kind of dedicated hint system for this game, because as I said, things start getting really, really challenging later on in the game. And the only thing the book has is a list of solutions at the back of the book. So if you're completely stuck, you can flip to the back and see the solution. And realistically, you could then work backwards from the solution to figure out how you got there. But for me, that's not so fulfilling. I don't want somebody to tell me the answer. I want somebody to say, hey, you remember that machine you designed in puzzle number 30? And you remember that machine that you designed in puzzle number 40? Well, if you have two of those number 30 machines and one of those 40 machines, and you think about how you can connect them to make this new thing happen, that might get you along, the path to the solution. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Not a solution, but use this piece of a machine and use this piece of a machine and see how you can make those two things answer this problem. And there is a nice community online, and there are quite a few forums, and on those forums there are some of those hints, but I really wish that there was a hint site for this game from the company. Again, there is an educator packet, and the educator packet does push some of those things so you could help your students if you were using this in class in a school. But unfortunately, that educator packet also only goes up to puzzle 30, which is kind of the end of that introduction set of puzzles. And I didn't need help for up to 30. From 31 to 60 is when things start getting more difficult. And I really, really wish there was some kind of hint system from 31 to 60 that I didn't have to get from community sort of forums. Because in a community forum, there's always the chance that somebody spoils more than what you want to be spoiled. And if there was some kind of hint system or even a tiered hint system from the publisher, that would be really, really helpful, because I do want to solve all of the puzzles myself, but sometimes I just walk into a wall when I can't get that first step that I need to solve a puzzle. But with that said, I guarantee that I will finish all 60 of these puzzles at some point. Getting it back off the shelf again so that I could finally get this video out for you has pushed me and has reminded me how much I enjoy this game. So I definitely look forward to digging into some of those more difficult puzzles and trying to figure them out where I failed the first time when I tried. Also, this company has a new kit out called Spintronics that does the same sort of physical representation, this time of electronic circuits and resistance and all of those kinds of things. I look forward to also eventually bringing out a video of that. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely keep an eye on the channel, because I will be covering that one as well at some point. That one's even more exciting for me because I am a physics teacher and I do teach electronics in my class. So if I could physically show the students something with that set, that excites me as well. Anyway, I've gone a little bit too long because that's not this game, that's another game. But with that said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope this video was helpful for you in figuring out what this is and if it might be for you. If so, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon below, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks.